Welcome back everyone to this lesson about the properties of a certain layer. So we have layers here in our timeline, and if you toggle open this little arrow here, it's going to open up the transform properties of this layer as an example. Now if I toggle open more the transform options, here are the basic options that you have for transformations in After Effects. You have the anchor point, you have the position, you have the scale, you have the rotation, and you have the opacity. So each of these control their respective things. So let's talk about the anchor point first. Okay, so the anchor point, you can see it visually represented here in the composition as this circle that has little arrows pointing up, left, right, and down, right? So this is the anchor point. And the anchor point, generally, when you create any layer in After Effects, will be in the center of that given layer. So if you start moving the anchor point, in order to illustrate that, let me go and show you here using the pen behind tool. The pen behind tool is the tool that actually allows you to move this anchor point. Okay, so if I move the anchor point here, let's say to the edge, to the right edge, let's say here, top right edge, and I switch off all the other layers, when I start rotating as an example, you will see that this rotates from where the anchor point is. It's basically the layer is anchored to this position. Okay, so this is going to be very important in motion graphics because how elements move, scale. Same thing goes for the scaling. If I put this on the left side and I start scaling, you will see it starts scaling from this position, from where the anchor point is, outwards. Okay, so the anchor point is a very important thing, and it pays off to understand how it works, how it moves, where to put it, and where you want it to be for a given layer. Now the position is pretty self-explanatory. On the X and Y position of a certain composition, it will give you values of where it's located. So if you move it to the left, the value changes. If you move it to the right, if you move it to the up in your composition, it will move up and change the value, right? So this is the idea of the position. Now, because the layer is in just 2 dimensions, it will be only moving on the X and the Y axis. It cannot move in the Z axis because it has no depth. It can only happen when you engage the 3D mode here we spoke earlier about, and then at this point and that stage you will get a couple of more options. All right, but the main one that I wanted to show you here is the Z axis, and now you will have the possibility of moving it closer or further away from the camera. All right, so this is for another lesson, but let's keep on the basic stuff here. Okay, the scale will scale your layer, again pertaining to where your anchor point is, and you will have this link here, this little chain that constrains the proportions. If you uncheck it, now you will be able to separately move the X and the Y for the scale, right? And you will be able to distort your layer. Now the rotation, we talked about the rotation. Rotation actually, well, revolves around itself, and you can decide when you're animating how many times you want it to revolve around itself. This is why you have this 3 times and the angle of rotation. And finally, the opacity, which defines how opaque, or let's say transparent or non-transparent, a given layer is, right? So those are the basic controls that you have in After Effects to manipulate your layers. All right, this is it for the transform options of a given layer. I'll see you in the next lesson.